Alrighty, hello students. In this video, we are going to be looking at parallel and perpendicular lines. And we're specifically going to be focusing on their slopes and how to identify them from equations. So let's go ahead and start out with some definitions. What are parallel lines? Well, parallel lines are two lines that are in the same plane that never cross. Two lines in the same plane that never cross. All right, so that's parallel. Two lines in the same plane that never cross. And when we draw them, we might draw them something like this, where we draw a line, and then we see another line next to it hanging out, and they look sort of like railroad tracks. And the way we mark those is by putting a second arrow, a red arrow on there. So they're marked with double arrows. So that's parallel lines. All right. Well, in that case, if that's parallel lines, what are perpendicular lines? Perpendicular lines. Well, perpendicular lines are a little different than parallel lines. In fact, they intersect, and they intersect in a very specific way. They intersect at 90 degrees. So we'd say two lines cross at 90 degrees. And we know that 90 degrees is a right angle. All right, so two lines crossing at a 90 degree or right angle are going to look like this, sometimes like an X or maybe a T, where they cross at a 90 degree angle. And the way that we'd mark this on a picture is by putting a little box in the corner. That little box right there tells us that that's a right angle. And if one of those is a right angle, all four of them must be 90, 90, 90, 90. Add that all up, you'd get the 360. So perpendicular lines are 90 degrees. Parallel lines never cross. All right, so these are our two definitions here. Parallel lines, two lines in the same plane that never cross. Perpendicular lines, two lines intersect at 90 degrees, or two lines that intersect at a right angle. How do we identify these on graphs and from equations? Well, that comes down to their slopes. Slope is the main component that we use to determine whether two lines are parallel or perpendicular, or maybe neither. Maybe they cross, but they don't cross at 90 degrees. They just cross at some other angle. That would be neither parallel nor perpendicular. So again, what do we look at? We look at the slopes. The slopes of parallel lines are the same. So I'm going to put that down here. I'll put it in blue. How about slopes are the same. So whatever the slope of one line is, the other line would have to have the same slope in order for it to be parallel. If we look over here at our perpendicular lines, well, they can't have the same slope. They have to have different slopes, and they have to have very specific different slopes. So here we say slopes are opposite reciprocals. What does it mean for two numbers, two slopes, to be opposite reciprocals? It means we have to do two things when it comes to their slope. We have to first make them opposites. Opposite is talking about sign, whether the sign of the slope is positive or negative. If one line has a positive slope, the other one has to have a negative slope. Reciprocals, what a reciprocal means to do is flip the fraction. So I've heard these called reciprocals because you are flipping the fraction. So what we have is for two lines to be perpendicular, they have to have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. So opposite means they have to have different signs, one positive, one negative. Reciprocal means to flip the fraction. So for example, if the slope of one line, let's say it was 3/5, then the slope of the line that's perpendicular would have to be negative 5/3. We take the fraction, we flip it over. We take the sign, we change the sign, always doing two things. Maybe if our starting slope was negative 7/2, well, we'd have to make it opposite for a perpendicular line. So we'd make it positive, and then we'd flip the fraction and make it 2/7. Well, what if you have a whole number like -8? All right, well, the slope of -8 means we go down 8 and over 1. Well, if we think about that over 1 as being -8 over 1 is the fraction, I could put this -8 over 1. Now I make it opposite, so I'm going to make it positive and flip the fraction. That's 1/8. So that's what it means for two numbers to be opposite reciprocals. And if the slopes of two lines are opposite reciprocals, those two lines are perpendicular. All right, so there's some basic information for you on parallel and perpendicular lines. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching.